For over a year now, since July of 2019, when we first became aware of it, we have included in our worship a ritual of remembrance and commitment. We recognize that there's suffering all over the world, brought about by natural and human-caused catastrophes. But we have felt compelled to ring our gong in honor of one particular place of suffering and then two others. Since last July, we have honored the 7 children who lost their lives last year in federal custody in detention camps. We also let its ringing symbolize those adults who lost their lives in those camps and who remain in such camps, many separated from their families, and now at great danger of being infected with COVID. And we ring our gong additionally, of course, for all those who have died of this global pandemic. Now over 772,000 globally, and 65,000 in the United States alone. And this week, the pace has only slackened slightly. We hold in our hearts all of those losses and those affected by them, and all those who continue to risk their lives to provide essential services, those who have suffered the loss of employment, and whose lives are especially vulnerable to the disease, and all whose isolation and struggle through grief and loneliness becomes harder the longer this pandemic continues. If one sign of sincerity in prayer is persistence, then the ringing of this gong for over a year is a sign of our faithfulness to the hope that suffering can yet be redeemed. I invite you now to join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, God of many names and mystery beyond all our naming, as we ponder today the twists and turns of our history, shared and private, help us to see that the chance for turning is forever before us. Teshuvah, you said to your Hebrew children, return. So we must return to what is deepest and most honest and most clear-headed and compassionate within us. So we must turn to what is highest and yet beckons us forward. Help us to know that the possibility of making such a turn arises with every dawn, follows us through every day, is with us even as the sun sets and our own days grow short. Turning to the best, turning to the goodness within those who respond so well to crisis, turning to the best within ourselves, turning toward one another, out of selfishness into deeper empathy. These are the twists and turns that matter. Help us now in this shared silence to ponder those places in our own lives where we might turn and be more fully alive, more human and humane, more compassionate citizens who carry forward a legacy of liberation and human freedom that is yet unfulfilled. And help us ponder how, in the week that lies before us, we can turn toward all that is holy and help to make this world just a bit more home-like for those with whom we share it. These things and more. Now in silence, we together pray. As it is in the meditations of our hearts, when we are most at one with ourselves, our best selves, with all that is holy, and with one another. So may it be also in our daily words and deeds. Amen.
In my life, I've looked back at periods of great change and significance and only recognized them years later. This weekend, I asked my husband, what one thing would he have done differently if he could have? In that very same moment, I thought to myself, what would I have done if I'd only just woken up a little earlier, smelled the coffee, passed on that extra slice of cake, not pushed that send button? Then I think, like the threads of a rope, my life can't be picked apart without unraveling it. And once unraveled, it wouldn't be the same. I got to where I am today through a series of graceful twists of that rope, experiences that bound together create a cord of who I am today, a cord that began with a biological connection to a 20-year-old woman from a small Texas town. Mom and I never had the talk as it's described today, a conversation about race and life. Rather, we had the conversation, the lessons, the examples of how to move safely in a hostile world, and the reminder that I was a person of worth. She has so many ways of putting it, so many ways of telling me over and over that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Each lesson building upon the past, layer by layer, hardening, protecting. She loves telling this one. She's running late to a meeting of her mostly white women's club, of which she was president. Knocking on the door, cake holder in hand, she's greeted by a visiting relative of the homeowner who beckons her to the kitchen. Naturally, she's there to prepare refreshments. Making a point, Mom dramatically emerged from the kitchen to the sounds of greetings and acknowledgments from her waiting club members. "So good to see you. We're waiting for you." Point made as the visiting relative slips upstairs. How about the story of the neighbor who knocks on her door and in a moment of honesty says she wasn't aware that there were black people in the neighborhood? Mom responds, "Oh, we're very quiet," sharing the encounter as a gotcha moment, a small victory, a rejoinder, turning back the hundreds of slights she'd experienced over the years, her fist in a velvet glove. These stories, big and small, surrounded me growing up. Paired with my own, they form a shell through which only the most direct and pointed acts of racism and homophobia can penetrate. Funny that only now, looking back, do I perceive them as layers and layers of experience, teaching, sharing, and lessons that prepared me for a hostile world and continue to protect me to this day. I'm in college, working my dream job, welcomed, trusted. I make my own hours. Then the familiar homophobic slur is tossed in my direction, but this time I march up to the perpetrator, ready for a serious confrontation. And you know what? He backs down. And yes, I am gay. And from that point forward, I hold my head just that much higher. Still, I know what fear looks like, what hesitation to do what's right feels like. I've heard the voices. You've gone too far. Be quiet. Don't say this or that. It's fear born out of survival, and there are plenty of examples of how speaking up or out can get you killed. It's so easy to think about what I should have done or could have done, or what I promised I'd do myself the next time if I had the chance. I recognize in hindsight the path not taken, the road not traveled, the regret, and the shame of not doing. But somehow, the woman who held me for months before I could breathe on my own, who first held me, seems to have passed on to me some truths that reside in me. That in my heart, I know what is right and what is wrong. That no matter the circumstances, I am a person of worth, and that I'm loved, and maybe more deeply, that action redeems hopelessness, and that redemption is found in doing. and with acknowledgments to Robert Frost, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So she's much slower now at 82. Technology lets me check in on her briefly, and I keep her privacy by not lingering on the images I see. I think I understand how mothers live on through their children, and I get a glimpse of that when she tells me that she would never forget the birthday of her firstborn.
Thank you, Richard. And now we will take an offering to support the works and ministries of this Mother Church that encourages courage and authenticity in all its children. You can give online by pressing the donation button on the order of service or on the website, and a link is also in the video description and chat. In the payment portal, please indicate if your gift is part of a pledge that you have made or just a general donation. We are truly grateful for all those who help to sustain this community, even in these difficult times. Your giving will now be gratefully received. A brief reading for us this morning, taken from the German writer Jan-Philipp in his book, The Art of Hearing Heartbeats. Perhaps something in life must be like a catastrophic turning point, when the world as we know ceases it to exist, and a moment that transforms us into a different person from one heartbeat to the next. The moment when a lover confesses that there's someone else and that he's leaving. Or the day we bury a father or a mother or a best friend. Or the moment when the doctor informs us of a malignant brain tumor. Or are such moments merely the dramatic conclusions of far lengthier processes? Conclusions we could have foreseen if only we had read the portents rather than disregarding them. And if these turning points are real, are we aware of them as they happen or approach? Or do we recognize the discontinuity only much later in our hindsight? There ends our reading.